that's up to you. You can so this is part of our question. This is. Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start the meeting by apologizing for our mishap on Monday evening, that the consent agenda, community forum was not on the agenda. And once an agenda is sent to the town hall, the town clerk, we have to follow what's on the agenda. So in an effort to rectify that, tonight we're going to allow community forum before and community forum after we have our questions and answer period. So we will start off now. If there's anyone who'd like to address the board this evening, please come forward, say your name and address.
138 Grove Street, Tommy Dana Merrill, and I'm speaking now because I'm not sure my last until you end, and I don't think I want to hear that one anyway. To start off with, your increase is high, and I understand that there are needs, but this is going to be 2 years in a row with a request of a really high budget, and as a property owner and a single income family, it's too high. I mean, my family is not getting an almost 5% increase from my husband's salary. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. I've never seen him get a 5% raise, and everything is going up, number one. Number two, I'm a little concerned with asking for us to buy staff computers when I believe there were at least approximately 60 in last year's budget. What's going to happen to those computers that we gave to staff? And are the computers more important than getting the Wi-Fi that our children need for testing that is inevitable, and we can't get out of it unless we decide to rid of Common Core, which isn't something that I would fight you on if you wanted to investigate that and consider it. But I just feel like we're purchasing things, and we're purchasing the same things year after year after year. So I don't understand that. It just feels like a waste of my money, to be quite frank with you, and it's frustrating. So do we need 300 staff computers, or can we use computers that we currently have that we purchased last year? That's my question. And I really would like this budget to be a needs budget. I get that there are things we all want. I want a lot of things at my house too. I do. But we have to prioritize, and I'm wondering, and I haven't been able to get through all the documents because they were not online until today. So I really would like to see that we go through this budget, that all of you go through this budget. Let's not pass it quickly, like let's just put it out to the voters. Let's go through it and really make sure that we're putting a dollar figure that we need and not extras. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? And we will move on with our budget workshop. And I will ask, we had some questions that was given to Dr. Conley the other night, so maybe we'll start with some of those answers.
Thank you. We do have handouts for you. Unfortunately, they're single-sided and quite long. We just received the high school class sizes from Mr. Roger Wright this evening. So that's why he is tasked to man the copy machine in there and bring them in. That's where Tricia's going right now. So I'll speak to these, and then when you get your copy, which are 2 at a time, I think she's going to be running in, then certainly we can go over them again if you wish. One of the questions was provide a summary of all staff increases and decreases. As I told you Monday night, the 2 teachers that are increased are the kindergarten teachers at Center Road School. The administrators are decreased overall by 1.0. That was 2 half-time seed coordinators or evaluators, a decrease of a half-time assessment coordinator, and an increase of a half-time athletic director as an administrator. Paraeducators, the increase is 9.5. Here comes three more copies, excellent. I'll wait for a moment so you can find your place. The increase in paraeducators is 9.5, and that would be 5 to general education, and that would be based on an increase of 36 students. So that would be in scientific research-based intervention. So these are regular ed students who need extra work, and that's being provided, the reteaching is being provided by the paras. And in special education, based on our trends right now, there's 81 students who need paras one-to-one, and so we're looking at increasing that by 4.5. In the secretary area, it's a decrease of 0.5, which has already occurred in the business office as of the first of the year. I was asked about the increase in the data processing account. I have given you a copy, so it would be this number, there we go. It is just after page 5, called Exhibit A. And so that is a snapshot of the first draft of the Vernon Data Processing Center, VDPC budget. You can see what's in there. Again, that is, we are trying to complete the fiber ring, and so there were increases there. The staffing is basically the same. Most things are basically the same. There was a huge offset last year of $782,000. It's not indicated what that was because that was on the town side. This is prepared by the town. So I will investigate that and get back to you on that. Depreciation was 173 last year. It's now 200 this year. So it does come up to just under $2 million.
I'm trying to stay with you.
Mhm.
May I ask what is this handout?
Those are the answers to your questions. So if this is page 1, that goes in backup material.
Right, but
It's
this
after
is the
page,
only one?
They're being printed right now.
not already yet.
But I want to be able to stay with you. Is what
Right,
you're
so
talking about.
would you like to wait? That's fine. I don't mind waiting
I
either.
can't.
That was my question at the beginning. Would you prefer to wait?
All right, are
Just so
there,
you have it.
I wanted to say at the beginning too, I'm sorry, that in an effort to move this along in a timely manner, we'll give everybody 5 minutes for their questions. And then we'll go again. So if not, one person has the floor for 2 hours. So do we want to ask some simple questions that are not in the handout? All right, who would like to start first?
Are you asking other questions if we're waiting for the handout?
Yes.
If we're waiting for the handout, are you asking if there's still some time here?
I'm asking for additional questions that are not covered in the handout. That weren't emailed or asked of Mary the other night. So if you come up with other questions.
I don't have any
You don't?
what's in the handout, so.
It's coming, Mr. Swan.
I've actually got it.
Okay, Mr. Stanton.
And again, some of these may require more research, I apologize, but since you asked. What is a science kit?
I think Mr. Testa is here. He probably would be much clearer than I. Why don't you come forward if you would, Mr. Testa, since this is just a workshop, or either way. Our students do hands-on science, and they receive a bucket of materials. And we're updating those as the science standards are being updated. Mr. Testa, do you want to add to that?
No, that really covers our K-5 curriculum in science. Our kits, we're part of a consortium, 5 other districts that we share the kits. So most grade levels have 3 kits, 1 in the fall, 1 in the winter, and then 1 again in the spring. So those are what we follow for the science curriculum.
So these actually rotate between schools, is what you're saying?
Yes, we do, we share. As a cost saving measure, we share.
Great, thanks. I was just curious. And I did have one additional question. There was a request on the budget for an assistant football coach at the high school, and I was curious to know what the number of students participating in football is.
And as soon as Mr. Rocket gets in here from his duty at the copy machine, I'm sure he'll answer that, but I will tell you that last year, Dr. Pacella's here, Dr. Pacella can answer
Yeah,
that.
we had between 55 and 60 votes this year, so we were a little bit better than we have been in past years. So again, right now in the current budget, we have one head coach and 3 assistants, which is light for a football program, honestly, but that's what we're currently operating in.
Great, thank you. And then there was one other question I had. You had indicated, and I'm trying to find the page, that you had been advised to fund something at basically 200%.
That would be workers' compensation at
Yes,
100%, that's correct.
Okay. And is that a change from what we've typically done in the past?
Typically, it's gone up about $10,000 or $15,000 to the current year is $130,000, and so we were asked to put in. So I didn't know at that point if risk management had come out with employees I didn't know on either side, because we are self-funded, so we put it all in one fund that had some serious injuries that I was unaware of. But that's not my understanding. So my understanding is that as the town figures that number, remember they're behind us in budgeting. So as they get closer to a true number, our number will change.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you have any other questions?
Not right now,
At
thank
this
you.
time, okay, anybody else have any? Mr. Polina?
With respect to the injuries, is it due to unsafe conditions in the workplace? Or is that something that we can do to mitigate that in the future? Or are these unusual circumstances that we would expect to see again?
Well, workers' compensation is due to injuries in the workplace, absolutely. And we have a variety of injuries, back strain with custodians lifting cafeteria tables, teacher tripping in the parking lot. I'm making these examples up. But those are the kinds of things. Knee injury that then may be aggravated and so may need surgery over time. There are some people who actually, if the back or the knee or whatever it is goes out, there could be permanent disability as well, and then the person would actually get a kind of a payout on the permanent disability because they'll never be 100% with that particular part of their body. But yes, we actually have a health and safety committee that talks about risk management all the time. We meet as well, Mr. Porcaro and I, with our 2 risk management people from the companies every other month and talk about what we can do to assure that our people are safe. We have an accident form that after each accident, the area must be addressed. We've asked them to take a picture. If there's water on the floor, how do we mitigate this? I think you're the last one, Mr. Stinsel, that needs it. Oh, okay, sorry. Is there someone who does not have a? Mr. Kim, sorry about that. So that we make sure it doesn't happen again. That's what we're all about in terms of risk management. So we actually received an award in terms of our risk management.
I just didn't know how to characterize this year's amounts, in terms of accidents or other factors we may be aware of at this level.
It would be employee accidents on the job.
Continuing along, I noticed that you're saying they're going to be reducing the secretaries by half a position, yet there seems to be a good size increase in the secretarial overtime. So how do you?
That's correct. We've already reduced by that half position as of the first of this year. But the secretaries, the contract was not settled by the time this budget was approved. And so any increase in their salary for this year, in fact, it wasn't approved until, it hasn't been signed yet. It hasn't been signed yet. It's been agreed to verbally, but it has not been signed yet. And so next year's budget, the 14-15 budget, reflects not only the increase that has been negotiated for the following year, but will have to reflect the increase for this year. So it reflects a 2-year increase. I looked at that and actually went through person by person to see that that was correct. So you'll see custodians, maintainers, and secretaries, it's a 2-year increase.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we went from 3 to 4 secretaries at BCMS.
I have not heard, we hired anyone at BCMS, no one that I know of. No, Mr. Harris is shaking his head as well.
For some reason, I thought there was an increase in staffing minutes.
We have not done that,
I'm mistaken.
not since I've been.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
I just want, what Mary was just saying about the 2 years of salary for the secretaries, that also applies to the librarians.
Librarians, that's correct.
And I believe the nurses also,
And.
because we just did their contract
Contract.
after last year's budget was done.
That's correct.
So this year's salaries and next year's, so that's why it looks like a big bump in those.
That is correct. And right now, we will be negotiating the paraprofessional contract this spring, and most likely after the budget passes, hopefully, the budget is going to pass quickly. And so, so next year, we will be in the same position where you will see 2 years of increases for 15, 16 in the paraprofessional line item. There should be no salary for individuals, just salary for additional people. The increases are kept in the contingency line item, which is the last line item in the budget.
Further, I have seen an increase in student transportation costs, and I don't have the number in front of me, but I was taking notes from the other day. And for your regular transportation, I think you increased something in the neighborhood of 2.75 to 2.5%, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's a huge increase in percentage for non-standard transportation, I think for athletes, I believe it is, and for non-standard service. Just wondering why that increase was so marked.
We're in the first year of a brand new contract with the bus company. Standard transportation went up, I want to say about $19,000. Equal amounts in 2 other line items. One is vans and lifts, and as we have students who come to us who need a wheelchair lift, and we have to provide that. In fact, in just this past week, today's only Wednesday, and within these 3 days, we had to authorize an additional lift van, which will cost us probably $270 a day between now and the end of the year, because we have a student who we can't add on anywhere, and we need another one. We need the lift vans, and that's probably approximately the same amount. I want to say there's about probably the same amount in athletic and field trips. There are some small amounts in there. One would be the wrestling team. The wrestling team, and you'll see a decrease in officials for wrestling and an increase in transportation because most of their meets are away this year, whereas last year it was the opposite. Most of their meets were home and they needed to pay officials. So there's an offset there, and it's pretty much equal. The biggest increase is approximately $9,000 for our students who need vocational work, who are working out in the community. Some of them are between 18 and 21 and work for our Next Step program. But there are others who are younger than that, but they are getting vocational skills and life skills in the community, and that's what those field trips are for. So those are for special education as well.
Okay, with respect to transportation, I know we're in a new contract, but is there any provisions that we can provide or get transportation from other sources?
We actually, and I know Mrs. Buell can answer this better than I, we piggyback anywhere we can. We send students to Wyndham Tech. And so the first student, last year we were sending a student to Wyndham Tech, and we would drive the student to Tolland, and then Tolland would drive them to Wyndham Tech, so we piggybacked there. We share transportation with a number of towns for out of town transportation like that. And Mrs. Beal can probably give a few more examples, but that's basically the way it works.
The reason I mention this is I do see a lot of small buses that are around town for Hockman. And I didn't know if there was any agreement between schools and them for any cross transportation.
I'm not sure of the level of inspection of the Hockenham buses. Our buses have a lot of regulations that they have to be just so. And so, especially, in fact, I used to, in my previous position, we owned our own bus company, and so I used to know those regulations. But they're even more strict for when you don't own your own bus company, I think because there's probably less oversight. And so if we could do that, we would. But mostly we would share with other First Student, Rainbow, DATCO, other companies where we might have a student going to a certain town and we can piggyback on that. If Ellington is going into Manchester and can pick up our students on the way to the same school, we do that.
Do we want to go back
It's up to you.
Yeah, let's go back to where.
I think you should all have this multi-page document in front of you now. I'll start again with number 1, provide a summary of all staff increases and decreases. These are the increases and decreases in this year's budget. And teachers, again, there are 2.0 full-time equivalents. Both of those are at Center Road School, and those are particular to the dollar of the 2 teachers who have been hired this year under the Alliance Grant for those positions. So whereas we usually budget MA3 plus benefits, which in round numbers is approximately $69,000, very specifically, we have budgeted for the 2 teachers in those positions, which happens to be less. We hired lower than we budgeted. Administrators, it's a net of a reduction of 1 FTE. We have, as we said last year, the 2 C evaluators, the 0.5. We are putting in another revision of our evaluation plan now that we're done with, or not done, but in the middle of year 1. So we are revising, and that will reduce the number of people we need doing the observations. And so those 2 positions are gone. The 0.5 assessment coordinator position will reside in Mr. Burt's office. He's curriculum assessment instruction, and will be coordinated by Mr. Burt, Mr. Testa, Mr. Gussie, and our secretary, Ms. Hoffman. The total para-educators, Mrs. Buell has added 9.5 FTE, 5 of them in general education. We have an increase right now of about 36 students who need those support services, and those are students who, under scientific research-based intervention, SRBI, you try to work with these students and accommodate for them and ensure that they do not get identified as special education students. And she has asked for an increase of 4.5 in special education for students based on the trends that are coming into the district. The secretary, as I said a few moments ago, we have already reduced. That was a 0.5 secretary position in the business office. The data processing account, you've asked for an explanation of that. What I've provided you, if you go through the first 5 pages, which are numbered here, it would be the next page, which is called Exhibit A. That is a picture of the first draft of the DDPC budget, as I said a few moments ago. Oh, Mr. Ward would like to add a comment. Would you like to? Please do.
Thank you. Through the chair, to Dr. Conway. I just wanted to add, you are correct. Thank you. This is, in essence, a preliminary budget because your budget cycle is ahead of ours. What this is the good faith estimate, but there is at least one error in it where the write-off for the amortization cost is not here. I'm looking to have this finalized for your next meeting. The 3 major cost drivers off the top of my head were wages. We did put in a position for a 3rd help desk person, and we also put in for 2 summer interns. There were interns last year at the high school that worked out very well. In addition, there's 2 major projects here. As Dr. Conway mentioned, the completion of the fiber rings to the school systems. That you will see here at $194,000 under connectivity cabling. The other major project that was the driver for the increase was $100,000 for extra memory for the computer backup system. We are in need of a great deal of storage. Those 2 projects the town is looking for alternate funding for. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to alleviate some of the pressure on the data processing budget, at least as far as 1450 is concerned. And I will be able to report that more definitively next week. So Certainly ask any questions, but I would also recommend that you hold off till next week when you have a little more refined budget before you. So, thank you, Dr. Conway. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Does anyone have any questions on this? Mr. Kemp?
Just like to clarify, I found the 194,000, John. The other item is where, please?
It's about 2 rows, I forget if it's below or above.
It's 3 lines above that, 120 hardware for expansion of the storage, if I may, as we work through that.
Yes, thank you, but since it didn't say expansion, I wasn't sure which. Expansion of storage, and was there a third one?
If I may, Dr. Conway, the other item I didn't mention was Mr. Segan, the IT director, is working to obtain a more precise cost on that, and he indicated to me he's optimistic it's going to come in below 100,000. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is there's a second page to this that at least doesn't seem to be in my handouts that has the wages on it. I don't know if this was a back page or not.
Any other questions? Through you.
May I ask Mr. Warren that question? You said you're looking for another funding source for those. Would that be a funding source to lessen the cost or just to take the cost of those 2 items?
Lesson.
The 184,000 and change that is indicated right now for the town data processing, is that the same amount that the town anticipates as its increase?
Yes, the tech council considered a 50-50 allocation of the cost of the data processing center. The town has a separate data processing budget in which we put in data processing items that are not shared with the Board of Education. Similar to the fact that you have some data processing costs in your budget. For example, I believe in the schools are independent of this. But for that center, it was a 50-50 allocation of those expenses.
All right, thank you.
Oh, yes, certainly.
So my question was on topic number 1. And I just wanted to ask the question, Dr. Conway, do we know how many positions have been frozen this year that haven't been filled because of the budget freeze? Do we know that number, or does Mr. Carl maybe have that?
Carl may, I know the painter has not been filled, the assistant principal secretary at the high school was not filled until just recently when Mr. Rocket made an incredible play and said he couldn't go on. I think that's about it in terms of frozen.
Reading teacher at Maple Street.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, there's a reading teacher at Maple Street School that is still open,
Oh, it's grant funded, sorry.
but still, that's all.
All right, any other questions on number 1 or 2 at this point? Okay, we'll move on to number 3.
Thank you. Mr. Picaro has provided a narrative there. When the agreement with Mr. Kleinhans was being negotiated, we talked about, is this a service or is this, are we going to pay? And the town indicated they wanted us to pay Mr. Kleinhans. And so he is, that has been in a line item, a salary line item, general control, non-affiliated, I think. And so in addition to that funding, the 30,000, we had to pay payroll taxes, Social Security, whatever else was involved there. On top of that, and certainly Mr. Kleinhans's taxes came out of that as well, the taxes he was responsible for. In addition, because he was getting pay from 2 sources for the town, he was in 2 different pension plans. And so the town's assistant administrator discovered that that's, should not be happening, obviously. And so we have been asked to move him to a service where we pay the town. And then the town takes care of everything, there's only one pension plan, and that would be moving forward. So they have also asked us, however, to continue to pay those payroll taxes. So that's why we have budgeted $35,000 to make sure we have enough for the payroll taxes as opposed to the original $30,000.
Anybody have any questions on that one? Number 4?
Mr. Burt did the research on this. This is historically our substitute teachers, as you can see. It starts from the bottom of the box there, what our budget was and what we actually spent. And you can see in the last 3 years, we've gone up considerably. This year, we've already used 55% of the funding. We are not at day 90 yet, so we are not halfway through the year. I know Mr. Burt has researched because we wanted to make sure we put enough in the budget to cover that, but he's also researched the reason teachers are taking time. Something that we haven't done in the past, but now that we have an HR department, we are doing is, for instance, if a teacher is out for 12 weeks, having had a baby, the first 6 weeks is maternity leave, get sick time, etc. The second 6 weeks is FMLA leave, but it's not paid leave. And yet we're still paying a substitute teacher. And so what we will now be doing, thanks to our department, our HR department, is the 6 weeks that we're paying the substitute teacher, we will be able to take the teacher's salary and move it, transfer it from there to the substitute account. So this has never happened before. So that will help us in some way there. We have several teachers out on maternity leave as we speak, and so that is going to help. It's only 6 weeks worth of salary, but it does make a difference over time. It still won't alleviate all of this overage, however. And I don't know if I may ask Mr. Burt to add to that. Thank you. Do you have anything to add to that? None of it. Okay.
Well done.
Questions?
From personal observation, I've noticed that a lot of teachers leave their classes during the course of the day to attend meetings both on-site and off-site. And with substitute teachers filling in the gaps, or maybe even, as far as I know, teachers in the joining room watching the classes. Do you have any numbers attributable to in-house professional development that is detracting from the account in terms of paying dollars out, that if we could move the meetings to a different time, so there was not missing class time? I mean, that's a substantial increase over the last few years.
I can get that data for you for next time, is how many days were actually professional development days as opposed to not. And those, if it's out of district professional development, obviously we don't have control over that. I will tell you that if it was in-house professional development that we were requiring and we were paying them after school, we would be paying the teachers per diem as opposed to $75 that a sub gets. We would be paying a full teacher salary for the day, for the time after school. So that's why I know some of it is during the day.
Yeah, anecdotally, I've heard stories that they need to go to central office, they have a meeting, a curriculum meeting, or what have you. So I just, wondering if we can do something to mitigate those costs by being a little more careful in how we make our arrangements.
And we are, I appreciate that, absolutely. We certainly look at that all the time. We do use our professional development days. In fact, on February 18th, our teachers will be reviewing all of our curriculum to see exactly where we are in every standard, in every content area, and every curriculum document. So it's kind of a self-audit for half of that day, which is necessary. The 5 days following the end of school, which now starts on the 12th of June, because the last day is the 11th, we are having teachers work on curriculum. So that's outside of school time, and they're paid an hourly rate according to their contract. That's not a per diem rate. So it is, and that's savings. And as much as we're chomping at the bit to get this done, I would like it done yesterday, the curriculum. That is one of the things we're doing, is waiting. Don't want to wait.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions on this? Mr. Wolf?
Thank you for the explanation, and I just, when I was looking at it and hearing that you're doing some analysis is very comforting. Is this number in line with, other districts, or do we have any way of knowing, is this the amount of substitute costs that we have comparable to, the area, or is it something that goes on in our buildings that's different, that we have more people using sick leave or whatever it is that's causing these substitutes to be needed?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's a good one. We can do it by teacher, by FTE. So we have approximately 325, I can get the exact number, teachers, and I could divide that into this and ask, Ellington divide by their teachers, Towns, Manchester, South Windsor. So I can get that data for you. That would be interesting trend data. I know that Mr. Bird has been looking at the data for absences as well. So how many people are out at different times of the year, different months, on professional days, on personal days, and what the trend data is there. Some of it I'm not pleased with.
I think that would be helpful to understand. I mean, is it something systemic in our district, or is it something that's, we're right in line with the norm? The number is very high and the amount of increase this year is very high. That's why I was concerned. Thank you.
Any other questions on number 4? Okay, number 5?
You can see these are the projected enrollment data for next year. I just moved them up a grade, all kids. I have had conversations with the principals continuously. There are 4 classes that are highlighted. Those classes, if you look at Center Road and Lake, certainly we could reduce. And so we could have 4 classes of 22 at Center Road, and we could have 2 classes of 22 or 23 at Lake. There are reasons the classes are those sizes, but certainly those are doable. At the same time, if you look at Maple Street and Skinner Road in those 2 classes, 2 classes of 24 in grade 3 is stretching it a little bit, and I know Mrs. Gandolf would prefer not to do that. And certainly in Skinner, 2 classes of 29 is way above the norm. And so right now, we would be moving the 2 teachers from Center Road and Lake to Maple and Skinner. My opinion is it's far too early in the process to make those decisions. So right now, I'm not asking for an increase or reflecting a decrease in classroom teachers right now. Otherwise, you can see so I've just kept the numbers the same. We did do a little massaging at Northeast School. Right now, there are 3 third grades. We're going to move that to 3 second grades, so there was no increase or decrease. And that reflects the student population there. Otherwise, I think that was it in terms of class sizes for elementary.
With respect to the class sizes, is there any data to represent the amount of paras that are directly supporting any given grade level? So in other words, say for instance, for the 3rd grade classes in Northeast School, there's 1 or 2 paras either per class or per grade level.
There are
have an evaluation as to how that's positively impacting.
Right, there are no paras per grade or per class. The paras are assigned to particular students or for particular needs. So they may go between classes, between grades. They may follow 1 student around depending on the child's needs as well. So I can't say we have 2 3rd grade paras at Lake Street School. It would be, we might have 2 paras in the 3rd grade, but we might have 2 students with intense needs that they are one-on-one with, or we might have 1 student with intense needs and 2 or 3 others that truly need extra support, and so the para would be there. They could both be in the same classroom as well. So I can tell you how many paras, we can get the data from Patty as to how many are in each building, but it would depend on what the student need was in that building as well.
Any other questions on that? Thank you. Number 6.
The line under pupil personnel, I think it does say principal. It's Mr. Wiley. He has retired. You accepted his position, and Mr. Wiley's position happens to be in pupil personnel. The elementary position, because it is combined, yes, it's under principals and supervisors. He is a supervisor. And that is in pupil personnel. The position of elementary, which also includes early childhood education and special programs there. That is in the central office position because it's not 100% special ed. It also includes early childhood ed. And so you would find that position under central office. And that is the fifth name down, third really line down. And that's Dr. Cassell. So those two positions are there.
I'm assuming you do anticipate filling in the Wilder's position.
We do. At this point, we absolutely do. I will tell you that we have started our work with Futures Education. They've started their interviews, and we're very excited about that. And so we're very anxious to hear what other districts are doing. And based on their work here, what they recommend for us. Do they recommend a different configuration of administration? Should we have one supervisor, K-12? Should we have someone else with early and doing out of it? So we're very open. We're looking for efficiencies. The idea of this is how can we improve our practice and how can we be more efficient in delivery of our services too. So
And when
hopefully
will
cost
they,
savings.
when will they have given us a report?
Beginning of March, so our budget will already be gone, but that doesn't mean that we can't change things at that point. Still, it won't have been passed by the town at that point.
Any other questions on number 6? Okay, we'll move on to number 7.
Number 7, you have 3 years worth of data for custodial overtime. Remember, our custodians have to work, we can't leave a building without a custodian. And so our custodians cover each other for sick time, for personal time, for vacation time. Our custodians need to be on-prem when we have building use. So if we have Boy Scout troop in, we have the PTO in for a function, whatever that is, they have to be on-prem for that as well. A lot of those hours are overtime hours. They're not regularly scheduled, especially our weekend hours. Park and Rec is in, we have custodians on. So where we might not have someone normally there, if Park and Rec is using the gymnasium, we still have to have a custodian on. So these reflect, the numbers in our current budget reflect what we're currently paying. And so we're trying to be honest and open in those numbers, and you know, certainly that's another number, we can cut it, but we certainly have to pay it when they work it. So we don't have much of a choice there. I know Mr. Picard put these numbers together, is that correct? So I'm sure he can answer specific questions if you have them.
Mr. Stansel?
So just for clarification, if Parks and Rec is using the facilities and we are providing the custodian, we are paying the overtime for the custodian even though it's a Parks and Rec function?
And they actually, that's part of their fee. They have to pay that, so it goes through.
Okay.
Also, we do use some of the fees to offset. So yes, it's not 100%, but this is what we're paying.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, it wasn't clear.
I was gonna go more or less on the same line as Mr. Stansel did. But for weeknights, typically you have your second shift custodian would be the building in any case. Do you have a number? I mean, are we getting substantially our cost back for the weekend or parking rent? Or are we basically floating funds to the parking rent to allow them to have their events?
No, not that I know. I'll turn this back over to Mr. Picard, but that's not my understanding.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Polina, we can certainly get the numbers by school use, but I would like to take the opportunity. We have revised our school use policies as well as our school use fees in an effort to try to control some of these overtime costs for this fiscal year. So we're hoping to see more school use fees available to us to help decrease our expenditures for the overtime costs across all of the schools in the district. So, but we can certainly get the breakdown by who's using our schools and the fees that we're charging to see how that all works out.
If I may add one more sentence to that, or two, you are correct in that if we have a second shift custodian on, then the building is more or less covered. But it would also depend on the event. So if it's a high school dance, the custodians need to be in the area for spilled soda, whatever it is, so they can't go off and just clean on the other side of the building. There'll be people there, but we may have to add a custodian for that. Unfortunately, the students are then charged as well for the overtime custodian, so we do try to offset it as much as possible.
The follow-up question on what was already talked about is the school use fees. Is there an offset somewhere represented in this budget for the school use fees? Because that does not go to the town, that's something that we manage.
Through the chair, it's actually a budget number that does go to the town, and it would be a number that we would have to add to our revenue estimates to the town. We don't take the funds in and then directly offset them. It has to go through the town account process to reduce those expenditures in the line items for the overtime expenses.
Okay, so the overtime, or the revenue numbers that we provided the other day, were those numbers, were that school use represented in that number?
We did not.
Those numbers?
Excuse me, through the chair, we did not include that revenue estimate just yet. We're still working on what that revenue estimate will be.
Okay, so I'd like to be able to see that in the future, because that's what I was curious about when we do the offset, is, you know, we're increasing the overtime, but I don't see the offset. Thank you.
Any other questions?
To Mr. Picaro, through you. The difference between budgeted and actual was pretty significant over 12 and 13. And I'd like to try to understand the reason for the requests. Sorry. It appears to be, some of those dollar amounts appear to be dollars actually spent, which is what you requested for the upcoming budget, but not in all cases, like central administration. If you can help me understand how the requests were arrived at.
Through the chair, we'll start with central administration. That's an easy one. The building, we have frankly increased the care of the building. There weren't many hours dedicated to the central administration building, the care of the building, the cleaning of the building, and so we made a concerted effort to improve that. And so that's why we're seeing an increase of cost there. But you're absolutely correct. In 12-13, there's a spike at Center Road School, a big one of $11,000 there in overtime costs. And so if I could bring that information back to you with the details as far as why those costs were incurred, especially some of the higher spikes like at Center Road School, we'll be glad to provide that in the next budget workshop meeting.
Any more questions?
Make a comment? I'm not second guessing you, Mr. Picaro, I'm just trying to understand. It appears that it took us a while to learn that we should have been doing something differently. So the budget requests for 14-15 include our past history?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on number 7? Okay, we'll move on to number 8.
Detail about the open positions, excuse me. We budget any teacher position open at Master's 3. This means the person has approximately 4 to 6 years experience and has a master's degree, excuse me. And most teachers out there do, both Eastern Central and UConn all offer a Master's of Arts in Teaching program, and many students go through a 5-year program as opposed to a 4-year. I just mentioned as an example, however, that we did hire the 2 kindergarten teachers at Center Road School are both bachelor's teachers. And so they came in at less than the amount that was budgeted. So you can see that there were 32 teachers hired since July 1st. And even though we budgeted 52,667, which is Master's 3 currently, the range was great because we want to hire the best teacher for the job. And so yes, we hired some teachers who were experienced and some who weren't, but the best person for the job. And the average salary was approximately $8,000 or $8,500 less than what was budgeted. So I think we did a good job there in terms of that. Excuse me, the retirements are listed there. There are 17 of them, plus one additional. person not coming back, so there are 18 positions listed there. Lake Street, those are classroom positions. Northeast, Skinner Road, there are a couple of special ed positions in there as well. Rockville High School, there's a science, a mathematics, 2 tech ed, and VCMS is a music and a science. And then there's a school psychologist and 2 speech people as well. Oh, I'm sorry, and then the MSS principal, that was the rate the last principal was paid, Mr. Barker Jones. And so the contract range is there, and that's in the high end of the range. I'm hoping for an experienced principal. I think that is needed at our Maple Street School. And so you can see that 128 is the rate for a 5-year experienced principal. And the other open position is Mr. Wiley's position, and that is what it is about.
Anybody have any questions on this? Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 9.
And number 9 was in our list of requests that were not put in the budget, which was part of the PowerPoint presentation. There were 2 maintainers, one I think a hardware specialist and the other an electrician. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Porcaro, who did the investigation on this one. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll provide a summary, and there's quite a bit of information included in that response there, but the gist of it is essentially the prime objective of consolidating some of our management services with the town was to reduce our cost and exposure to expensive contractors and subcontractors for the work that the maintainers would do in district. The other objective was to address the higher sophistication requirements for some of the work in district. So when we talk about technology and the new technologies that we're bringing in district, as an example, when we talk about the increased security of the post-Newtown tragedy, there's quite a bit of increase in timeliness required for us and sophistication in the work that we're doing in district. So there's a couple of good examples in there that I would draw your attention to. One in particular is our experience with not having to bring in any outside vendors for the day-to-day heating and air conditioning repairs in district because of the one HVAC tech that we have on staff. And we believe that has yielded quite a bit of savings for us over the period of time that this person's been on our staff. We've also seen a reduction in wait times, but we can do better, especially with some of those additional requirements that I've mentioned before. And then at the end of the explanation, you can see some of the rates to put it in dollars and cents. If you look at what the current cost is to bring in some of these expensive contractors, it could be anywhere between $100 and $150 per hour, where our true cost, benefits included, would be more along the lines of about $50 per hour and $50 per hour range for some of the in-district work for a staff person.
Mr. Gould.
Thank you for the written explanation here. The reason why I was asking that particular question was exactly as you described, to find out, are we experiencing expenses in district or at the town level, because we do share the resources when needed, that if we hired somebody, we could actually get a net savings in the future year. You know, so by not adding them, yeah, we keep the budget lower, but are we incurring expenses over the year? So that was kind of the direction I was trying to go with the question. And I wanted to see if we had any experience over this past year that would say, you know, we had to hire an electrician 24 times, we had to pay him overtime on a weekend or double time or whatever it was, and this is what our bills look like. That would give us reason to say, maybe we need to put that in our budget. So I don't know if there's any additional supporting documentation like that that may tell us, you know, it's a good decision to add them for this reason or not. And I think what you've provided here is very good, but I don't know if there's any financial numbers that we could add to that to show the story.
Yes, through the chair, we can certainly do the cost benefit analysis and break it down.
So you'll bring that back to us?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Okay.
Yes. The rest of your packet is Exhibit A, as I shared with you before, which is part of the BDPC budget. And then you have class sizes for grades 6, 7, and 8 as Exhibit B. So there are 3 pages that Mr. Harrison has prepared for us. And then the next 45 pages are class sizes at Rockville High School. You may see small class sizes that, I'll give you an example of perhaps French 4 and 5. You may see 6 kids in French 4 and 3 kids in French 5. I can assure you they're in the same classroom at the same time with the same teacher. They're not 2 separate classes. So there are certainly, I'm sure Mr. Rocket can answer some of these questions for you, or if there are not, but that's a lot of documents to give you right now. So if you do have questions about that, if you could email me, I'm sure Mr. Rocket and I can provide a full explanation for you. But if you have questions now as well, please feel free. Anybody have questions right now?
At this point, I don't think we have any questions. We'll probably come back to them after we've had a chance to look at it more carefully. So that is it for your, we'll move on to other questions that people may have come up with. Vernon, Mr. Stanton.
I'll re-ask my question since Mr. Rocket is. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Dr. Brazell answered the question already. My apologies.
You all set then?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions at this time? Okay. I do have some questions. I noticed that this year we have a half-time administrator doing out-of-district PPTs, and in the budget you have it as a full-time position?
That should not be that way.
Oh, maybe I misread it. I have no idea. Right on the line item, I'm sorry. I think it was central office.
It does say 1.0, but that is half the salary. It should say 0.5. It's just a typo. The number is correct. Thank you.
It's the
That was the
out-of-district
first page in, first white page in central office. 3 inches down. Coordinators, facility managers, out of district, it did say 1.0, it is 0.5, and the salary is correct for 1.5.
Okay, good. Then some of the expenses in the Next Step program, I thought the Next Step program was supposed to be a self-funding program? Or some of the income that we get from students would help offset some of our expenses? Is that not the case?
And Mrs. Buell, if you want to address that, we'd all appreciate it. I know that we did add expenses for Next Step in there as well.
The Next Step program is a program that we offer. We're required to offer programming for 18 to 21-year-olds. There are times when we accept tuition students into that program. The last few years has been numerous students from different communities. It's an exceptional program, and that's why schools are coming to us. It's not a guarantee. Tomorrow they could say, we're going to create our own program, so we've got a budget for that program fully. This year we were able to use some of the revenue that's coming from that program to offset the expenses of the program. But again, I have no idea whether we'll have any students, whether we'll have 2. I'm projecting that we could have some, but they also could, the districts could choose not to send them.
Thank you. And then I wanted to ask about the athletic director, 0.5 position. Would that cover Rockville High as well as New Zealand's?
That's correct.
And then I noticed in Rockville High's budget, the PE department head, looks like it's a new position, is that true? There was no funding for it?
That's correct, that was part of the central office or the administrative reorg from last spring. So that funding came out of the administrative line item. We created department head, a 612 department head actually for physical education, and a K-5 department head for physical education, a subject leader for physical education, as opposed to the administrator oversight.
Okay. And I also noticed that in the Rockville High School budget, I'm sorry, I can't find it right now. The salaries were different for the department heads. Shouldn't they all be the same or no?
Some of them are department heads, some of them are subject leaders, and those are different amounts. Some of them may be, what's the third category? Mr. Harrison, what do they call it in the middle school?
Facilitators.
Thank you, subject facilitators.
So, because at the high school, the art and music, world languages, and science have a different stipend.
That's correct. Those were negotiated with the union this past year because those were the new ones. We had administrators doing that, and so they are, I think they're subject leaders, 612, because they don't have department head certification. So it's a different amount.
Anybody else? Well, I'll keep going, I guess.
Mr. Stansel and Mr.
Oh,
Kemp.
good. Okay, go. Mr. Stansel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Vernon Elementary School 5400 account, all of the other elementary schools, the services in that account have been brought under the central office budget, at least all the ones that I flipped through, and this one is not. So I was curious why that was, and if that budgeted amount has anything to do with some of the complaints that there is a lot of noise transference between the Vernon Elementary School students and the high school students on the other side of the wall.
That's $15,000 you're referring to?
Correct.
No, it has everything to do with providing a play space, is my understanding. Mrs. Buell, yes, no? Isn't that the play space for our students?
That's part of it. Also, there's some discussion of reorganizing some of the spaces that are being used currently by students and teachers. So that would be some walls.
So dividing a classroom by putting a wall up in there. But it doesn't have anything to do with noise reduction. We are looking at locations within the school that might be.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Mr. Kemp?
I'd just like to come back to, if you would mind, the middle school class size. I'd like to understand the display. It displays grades 6, 7, and 8, and down under Unified Arts, could you please clarify the 3 blocks that are on the bottom of each of those pages that indicate Unified Arts?
I'm going to allow Mr. Harrison to do that, but I will say they have an entirely different schedule than the rest of the school.
And I'll do my best, but those reflect the Unified Arts class, so we have 6 rotations. So across the top is 1 through 6. And then so the first rotation of art, you have 16. So it's 6 rotations, they rotate
In grade 6,
in grade 6.
okay? And then you have 5 in grade 7.
Correct. They have, in grade 6, these 6 rotations are roughly 29 to 30 days. In 7th grade, it's about 36 days because we don't offer keyboarding.
Because what?
No, we don't offer keyboarding as one of the options. Keyboarding is offered in 6th grade, but not in 7th.
Oh, yes, until you said that, I didn't realize there's no keyboarding in the 7
And then in eighth, it's back to 6 because this career is for our 8th graders.
Okay, and then in each of the little squares, this is head count,
Correct.
student head count?
Yes. And there's times where if I could jump to this, if that's some of what you're looking at, there's times unfortunately where if you look at in 6th grade, for example, in that third column, there are kids that are at times taking band and chorus. It affects the numbers in those classes at those times.
I'm sorry,
Band and chorus kids. In other words, if there's only 6 in art in that one of those last sections, it's because there's times where kids on 6C might be taking band and chorus, and they're taking it during the time of those rotations.
the numbers are rather low, 6 and 7. Which happens in the 6C grouping, and yet you don't see that in the other grades. Why is that unique then to the 6th grade? If there are lower.
I think again, the best of my knowledge right now, I will get you that answer for sure, because I'm looking at it now, I'm trying to figure out the schedule, putting this today. The 6th and 7th and the lower numbers reflect the kids that were being pulled out at the 6th grade during band and chorus at that time. The other grade levels might have band and chorus at a more conducive time, so it's not conflicting with their other unified arts classes. So within any schedule, there's only certain options that you have. And I'm thinking, and I apologize for not having any certain answer for you, but I'm thinking that is in fact the case with the 6th grade schedule.
That's all right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Jim, while you're up here, can I ask you a VCMS question?
Sure.
Item 53339, the piano accompanist, almost doubled in price. Do you know why that was?
Sorry, could you give me that number again?
53339.
As this is the first time I'm doing this, I'll ask you a third time. Could you give me that number one more time? I apologize.
Maybe I gave you the wrong, I think it's 53339.
Thank you. No, again, off the top of my head, I would think that either that is reflective of current costs, or whether there was an additional performance that was needed for that or will be needed. I know that we're looking to increase some of the performances, and we've had some assemblies where even prior to the assembly, we've kind of offered some entertainment or a way for someone to come in and play piano and play an instrument prior to what was going on.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Harrison while he's in the hot seat? Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll be glad to come back.
I have some questions for the different principals, but I have one general question. I guess it's really for Maple Street. It's item 55650 for conference fees for principals, and all the other elementary schools are in the $500 to $600 range, whereas Maple Street's $1,100. And that seemed like
They should be in the same range. Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. Is that a line item?
55650. At Northeast School, the principal is getting a 4.6% raise. If that's accurate, I do know.
Ms. Green was hired a year ago, so would have been there for this year in the budget. I'm guessing, so last year's budget was reflective of the previous principal.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember exactly.
And
when it
so
started.
it would show an increase, or am I off a year?
Is this her second or third?
This is her
Second, okay. So that's right. Right. So that, what would have been in
No, that's
the,
a
no,
year
that's
off.
not right, yeah. So I just thought, I didn't know if she got an additional degree, or, that seemed like a significant jump. Also, while we're in Northeast School, we have 2 teachers being paid, 50% of their pay is the Alliance teachers. What exactly is their job? Are they classroom teachers or?
Oh, thank you, I'm sorry. Amy Violette is a mathematics interventionist. You'll see her .5 at Northeast and .5 at Maple Street. And the other person is Julie McGinley, and she is art. We increased art and music across the district in order to provide planning time for teachers, and that all came out of the Alliance District. So she is now a full-time.
She's 50%.
No, she's-
At the Northeast, is she at another school also?
She's 1.0 at Northeast.
Oh, she's 1.0, okay. All right, thank you.
Oh, there she is up there.
Oh,
There's the
I'm
0.5
sorry,
up
I
there,
didn't see
and there's
that
the
there.
0.5 down there, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
We
That's
actually, for clarity, we'll move that other piece up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then also in Northeast, the field trips under general instruction was a significant increase. And I thought field trips were all being put into the central office budget, so I'm kind of confused why some are in the school budgets and some are in the central office budget.
I would ask the same question. What line item is that?
55920.
The 5 principals did their budgets together, so they should be very much in line with the number of students.
Center Road School also had that, a big increase, and I thought they were being consolidated into central office. They went from 1,300 to 2,100. So
I will look that up, and we'll provide that as an answer for next time.
okay. Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Quinn.
Is there a quick and easy way to determine which accounts are being transferred from the individual schools back to central office for the purposes of this budget?
They, it would list it. Next to the account, it would say that. If you look in central office under curriculum for the lower grades, you will see what those line items be, or actually under utilities, you'll see in central office. They have been moved, so you would find a comparable reduction in the white pages, it would be, I'm sorry. So you can see on 54,110. So those lines have been moved, so you would find comparable decreases in the location budget. And then on the next page, repair of instructional equipment, the copier leases, and then further down, conference fees, and eventually textbooks and instructional supplies. And it lists where, what school it has come from and what the amount is, so that you have a snapshot and see the comparable amounts between schools. It was done per pupil.
Thank you. I was just curious if there's any way to get this budget document in an electronic format, like Excel or whatever, that we could then sort it ourselves based on the fields.
Absolutely. We'll get that out to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Would all board members prefer to have an electronic copy?
I would like an electronic copy.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? still have finished going through it, so I will probably email you questions for next week. And everyone else, please, if you have more questions, because we do need to start determining what we're going to do after we've got our questions answered. Mr. Steffen?
I will ask one more question, and if this is not applicable to this forum, please feel free to tell me. Just going back to the DPW director question that I'd asked earlier and the changes that are being made, that agreement was originally ratified by the Board of Ed and the Town Council. Are we going to see a new agreement for ratification by the board reflecting these changes?
We did that in the last 2 years.
Correct, but this is changing the structure of that agreement. I'm just.
Carl can answer that question.
Through you, Madam Chair, the changes that you see reflected here coincide with the agreement. So the changes that we made are consistent with the new agreement. We can certainly get a copy of that out and review that then, but we, as Madam Chair had said, we spent considerable time going through that. In the narrative, the superintendent touched on a couple of items like the pension and payment process, but there were other concerns raised by board members and so forth to tighten the language up in that agreement as well. Thank you. I just appreciate it.
Okay, well, if we, Mr. Quinn.
One question, on account 51-115, coordinators / facility managers, it reduces to 34.4%. Where's that going?
Can you tell me which location you're in?
I
I'm
would
sorry.
have to get the big.
Oh, the big picture?
I couldn't.
What's in the budget summary? Can you give that number again, please?
Let's see, it was a minus 34.4.
No, the object number.
5-1-1-1.
111.
5.
Coordinators, facility managers. That would be all up here in central office.
Okay.
And you can see that 51115 has the exact same number in reduction there. And so once you turn to the white pages, you will see that it's the reduction in the assessment coordinator 0.5 position and the 2.5 seed positions. They're no longer written there.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, well, as I said, if you have more questions, please email them to Dr. Conway so the answers can be prepared. Go for it.
Sorry, this isn't exactly a question, Madam Chairwoman, but in light of the comment made this evening and comments that I've seen elsewhere, I wonder if we could look to spend a little time at the next budget review discussing the reasoning behind the computer lease agreement that we're seeking to enter into. I know we did spend a little time at the regular board meeting last time and perhaps doing a more thorough explanation, including.
Mr. Lemoy is here right now, so why don't we do it now? If
Fine to do it
you're
now,
prepared,
if people are.
Don't want to put you on the
ready.
spot, but.
Thank you. The reason for, there are multiple reasons actually for the change in the teachers' laptops. Probably the most important is our curriculum piece. I mean, our curriculum is changing. We are trying to adapt to a mobile world, and having teachers sort of anchored and tethered to the front of the classroom is an old school way of paying attention to instruction. And so we're trying to move more into the 21st century. The other piece is just a logistic issue. We have teachers in the district that have computers that are 10, 12 years old. So it's virtually impossible for them to do the kinds of things that they need to do or the things that we're asking them to do, given the equipment that they have. The other piece is also a logistics one from an IT perspective. We have so many different variety of computers throughout the district. It makes it very difficult to service those computers in an efficient way, and we spend a great deal of IT time working on imaging those stations and building the correct images for those. So to have a single standard platform across the board would allow us to make those upgrades and images a lot more efficient. It also puts everybody at the same playing level. The other issue is we haven't had a viable computer rotation plan in the district, and this is the beginnings of that process for us. And so that will allow us to get on a track that will allow us to operationalize these types of core assets that are essential to what teachers do on a daily basis.
Thank you very much. I had the benefit of hearing that before, but I just wanted to make sure everybody heard and understood. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask the question that was asked, the 52 computers that we bought last year for the teachers, where are they gonna go?
We've had multiple discussions around that, and it sounds like the direction that we're angling is to rotate those into the hands of our students. We have a number of aged computer cards in the district. Some of the computers, laptop cards are seen laptops that are 7, 8 years old. And so they're virtually non-usable by students and are often just left and unused. So I would suspect that a great deal of those, if not all of them, would cycle down into the hands of students. So in that sense, we're really stretching our dollars and getting the maximum usage out of those devices. So they certainly are not wasted. This is something that we're going to be addressing from now on. We have student devices that are very old, and so they have to begin thinking about rotating those out of the district as well. Today, I was just talking with somebody about XP. We're getting very close to a place where we're not going to be able to run the kinds of things that we need to run because the software has changed. We have a drafting piece of software today that we just can't run on XP anymore, and so we have to upgrade to Windows 7. Many of the machines that we have in the district are not capable of running Windows 7, and so this is the beginnings of that process.
I just wanted to follow up exactly on what you're saying with the machines that are end of life. Is there any value to the district of those at all, or are we going to scrap them, or is there a potential that we could give them to needy students, something like that? I don't know, just asking that question.
You know, I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. I mean, we certainly have machines that are 13, 14 years old, and to me, I see very little value in a machine that's running, at 13, 14-year-old age. We have a program where we're trying to grab computer parts and utilize students. I know Mr. Kibbe has been working on this in terms of taking older computers and maybe 3 of them to build one viable one. And then if we can find an application in the district for it, say, for example, typing in some other elementary schools, we would certainly look at rotating those into that environment. It's important that it's feasible and practical. We don't want to make more work for IT by putting much older machines. And so, yeah, my sense is it's going to be very much a case-by-case basis.
If I might, I believe Mr. Picaro had made a mention that there's an online website, and I can't recall the name of it, that allows the use of products to be expended by selling it to other municipalities or within the town or to other parties who might be interested in purchasing those items. And the idea that you could recover some cash value at the end of the day. I don't know if Mr. Picaro has looked into it for these particular items. Through the chair.
Through the chair. We've just begun that process of looking at our assets, and we have identified some equipment. I believe that the Finance Committee, to your point, Mr. Cleaner, we had discussed the VCRs and so forth, some old outdated equipment that does not have use in our school district, but we feel could have some value in another district, or maybe from a parts company to turn around and sell some of those parts for their business purposes. So we are posting those on publicsurplus.com, and as we continue to roll out this brand new feature, it will be open to schools, it will be open to the public, beyond just other municipalities and districts as well. So we hope to see some revenue come into the town for those items and clear up some space in our schools.
Because while it might be commendable to give the old computers to students who might need them, on the other hand, their ability to tech support them and actually use them properly might be less than what the schools could properly do themselves.
Exactly, I agree.
Any Any other questions for Mr. Lemoyne while he's here? Thank you very much. Well, if we have no other questions for now, anybody, we will open it up to community forum. If there's anyone else who would like to speak to the board, please come forward. Seeing as there is no one, Mr. Wolf,
Motion to adjourn.
second. Mr. Stansel? All those in favor?